All right, welcome back in. It's the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio on your Sunday morning. The national championship game is set for tomorrow night, and that's going to be Villanova and Michigan after last night's Final Four matchups. Now let's go to San Antonio and welcome in someone that's covering the Final Four. He's a CBS Sports senior writer, and you all know him as the bracketologist for CBS. You can follow him on Twitter at JPPalmCBS. That's our good friend Jerry Palm, who joins us right now on CBS Sports Radio. Jerry, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Well, doing great. So let's first start off with Villanova. Last night, they get the big 95-79 victory. 18 three-pointers for the Wildcats. I think they just hit another one as we speak. It was unbelievable to see right out of the gate. Villanova very dominant from behind the arc.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you feel for Kansas because there wasn't really anything they could do. It was just, bombs away, one after another. They had 10 by, I think, 7 minutes into the game. And they ended up 13, which was the record for a Final Four game with 13. They tied that by halftime and then added another, I think, 5 in the second half. There just wasn't any. Kansas had no answers for Villanova's offense. And, Villanova can do that to you. I mean, this is one of the most efficient offenses of all time. They set the record for the most three-pointers in a regular season and now set the record for the most three-pointers in a Final Four game. So, when they're on their game, I don't know that there's anything anybody can do about it.
We all know how good Villanova is, but with how lopsided the result was last night, did that come to a surprise? Did you expect the game to be a little bit closer, or is this just this team is that good and it doesn't matter who they're playing?
Well, I mean, I don't think you ever really expect two number one seeds to play each other and have it just be over before the second TV timeout. But that's what happened this time, and it really had to do with just Villanova having one of those magic level kind of games, where they couldn't do anything wrong. And I don't think that, Kansas could do anything about it. I don't think Virginia would have been able to do anything about it. There just wasn't a team out there, in college basketball that could have done anything with Villanova tonight. So, for Michigan, they got to be happy because you hope Virginia left a little bit too much on the table tonight and may not have as much for them on Monday.
If you take a look back at the last 5 years of Villanova basketball, I was looking at the stats before we did start the show this morning. 164-21 in the last 5 years, 77-13 in the conference, three-time Big East Conference tournament champions, 2 Final Four appearances. They obviously won the national championship and are now looking to make it 2 in 3 years. But when you look at it from the big picture this last 5 years and what Jay Wright has been able to do, what stands out to you the most about the job Jay Wright has done specifically in these last 5 years?
Well, it's getting a culture in his program of the right attitude towards what you need to do to win at this level. And obviously you have to have players to do it too. But I think that, just building up that culture to be, to have everybody buying into what it takes to do that. And just as an example, tonight we were talking about how good his offense was, historically. And he said, well, it's the best offense that we've ever had, but it was a problem for us early in the season because it made us lazy on defense. We weren't going to get to this level if we didn't fix that. And, when you've got kids who like scoring and, players generally much prefer offense to defense, but they bought in. It's like, all right, we got to fix that. If we want to be champions, we got to fix that. And they did. And here they are on the cusp of perhaps another national championship.
And you look at the team this year, we all know how good that backcourt was going into this tournament with DiVincenzo, Bridges, and then the player of the year in Brunson. But it also doesn't hurt them when you have Pascal and Spellman, guys that play in their front court going behind the arc and also cashing in on some threes.
Yeah, I mean, they've got great size, but it's size that's versatile. It'll be a team that could probably defend Moe Wagner, but then challenge Michigan to defend them as well. It's there really isn't a whole lot. There isn't a whole lot of weakness in what Villanova does. It's just are they hitting their shots? If they're hitting their shots, you got a problem. And
then you also look at from a historical standpoint. The Big East was in that question mark period, and everyone loves the old Big East. I grew up as a kid on Long Island. I always make the trip to Madison Square Garden for the old Big East tournament. Villanova's done a remarkable job for this new Big East over the last few years, too.
Well, yeah, but the other teams have picked this up. I mean, this
no
is
question.
A league the league has put 7 teams in the tournament last year, 6 teams in it this year. When you only got 10 to begin with, those are great numbers. and 7 is basically a record number. So it's not just Villanova that is exceeding. Xavier's been great, and now that Chris Mack is gone, I don't think you're going to see much of a drop off from them. But Creighton's been good. These programs in this league have really stepped up to meet that challenge, and it's a good league top to bottom.
Talking to Jerry Palm right now. He's in San Antonio for the Final Four national championship game between Michigan and Villanova coming up on Monday night. Let's get to the Michigan game from last night up against Loyola Chicago. In that first half, Michigan just couldn't hit anything, and then in the final 10 minutes, they started to go on their run when Loyola had another cold spurt in this game. Just how about the way Michigan closed out that game and the brilliant play of Moe Wagner?
Yeah, well, he was fantastic. In fact, he was all they had in the first half, really. Matthews contributed some, but, Wagner was put the team on his back in the first half, and in the second half, the other guys started to chip in a little bit. But Wagner was terrific. But when the game turned on the defense, they forced 5 straight possessions from Loyola where they had turnovers and they were able to get some easy baskets. They were shooting terribly from three-point range, but actually about 50%, inside the arc. And they started to attack the rim, got some of those shots to fall, and it opened up the three-point line for some better looks that they weren't getting earlier. So it snowballed on Loyola in a hurry. A great team that had a great year and a terrific story in this tournament, but Michigan in the end, their defense was too much.
And you look at Moe Wagner, I was waiting for him to get gassed in that game, and down the stretch, the 2 big three-pointers, he has the three-point play, and he just didn't get tired in that one.
Yeah, not as much as you would have thought. I mean, late in the first half, when Teskey was in foul trouble and he couldn't play, and Wagner had to go significant minutes in that half. It looked like the end of the first half he wore out a little bit, but he had pretty good energy in the second half. And you're right. I mean, made some big plays late to help seal the win.
Talking to Jerry Palm right now, CBS Sports senior writer and bracketologist. You can follow him on Twitter at JPPalmCBS. It's the Zach Gelb Show right here on CBS Sports Radio. You mentioned the story of Loyola Chicago. They've been the darling of this NCAA tournament, being an 11 seed to reach the Final Four. An unbelievable year for Porter Moser and his squad. How will you remember this story of one Loyola Chicago?
Well, I'm a Chicago guy, so it's a lot easier for me to remember it. But it's just the chemistry of this team, the way that they won in clutch fashion the first 3 games. They won by a total of 4 points and a couple of buzzer beaters and another shot. Just the way that they got here. And of course, you'll always remember Sister Jean. Their team chaplain. The person who was really the heart and soul of this team in a lot of ways, and the balancing force of this team. She was the one that kept them up when they were getting down, and you think, well, 98-year-old nun, it's a huge story, but she really has an important role on that team, and it was fascinating to see her and to see her celebrity turn. It's more than 15 minutes of fame for Sister Jean.
When you look at their seeding of an 11 seed, and you being so plugged into the brackets and having a better understanding than we do, the easy thing to say when you see a team advance to the Final Four that was at 11 was their seed was not done correctly. How do you address that conversation?
All right, so if you're going to say that your seed should be based on what you did in the tournament, then you're saying they should be a 1.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's the conversation.
That's how I address.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, you can't base seeding. You can't even judge seeding by what teams do in the tournament, because the tournament isn't what it's based on. It's based on what you do in the regular season. Loyola doesn't make this tournament if they don't win their league. They're an 11. They were the highest seeded team from a one-bid league, and their season reflected that. And they took advantage of the opportunity that they had. But you kind of have to understand that the difference between a 6 seed and an 11 seed, or even a 13 seed, or even the top 2 seeds in the NIT is very little in terms of the quality of the team. What's different about them is the quality of their resumes. So, that's where the seeding comes from. And then what you do with it, you do with it.
Big picture, what do you think this program is going to become in the next few years, Loyola Chicago?
Well, I think they could still be pretty good in the Missouri Valley. I mean, Custer comes back for one more year. He was their best player. Krautwig, their center, is only 6'9", but He's got some great moves around the basket already. If he catches the ball deep, you're not going to keep him from scoring. Anybody in that league is going to keep him from scoring. So they've got some really good pieces to continue to build around. I don't know what their recruiting is like because I don't really follow recruiting that closely, but I don't see any reason why Loyola shouldn't be able to still be competitive in the Missouri Valley.
Wrapping up with Jerry Palm right now. Great stuff with him so far on CBS Sports Radio. With this national championship game, my first two thoughts, what's Villanova going to look like from three and how Michigan will defend them? We know Michigan's a good defensive team. And then the other one is how Villanova matches up against Moe Wagner. I think they can contain him, but how about those two elements? Attack those for me right now.
Yeah, I think it could end up being a low-scoring game because both of these teams are so good defensively. Now, they can both score, too, but I think that, defense rules. When you've got if you've got two really good defensive teams, it almost doesn't matter how good you are offensively. You're probably going to have a low-scoring game. Now, that doesn't always work that way, but I expect a game in the 60s. I expect that Villanova will win. They might even win comfortably, but it's really going to depend. I mean, if Villanova's hitting shots, they can put up a big number, and I don't know if Michigan can keep up. Now, the matchup with Moe Wagner, I think this is a matchup that's probably not good for Michigan because they've got guys like Pascal, like Spellman, who can guard him, and then I don't know that they've got two guys that can guard those two. They got one, but I don't know if they've got two. I think, Pascal and Spellman together are a tougher matchup for Michigan than Moe Wagner is for Villanova.
When you look at it from a Michigan perspective, because Villanova, we all know how tough it is to beat them. Just ask West Virginia in this year's tournament, and West Virginia did everything they could, and they ended up not really making that game as close as it did reflect when you were actually watching that game. If Michigan's going to win this game, is it just as simple as Villanova's going to have an off night shooting the basketball? Like, what does Michigan need to do to secure this victory?
Well, I think they need to force the off night shooting the basketball. They need to pressure them at the 3-point line. They need to probably try and force them to take twos instead of threes. And it's kind of a pick your poison thing. It's not. Beeline compared the defending Loyola to like defending Purdue because they had a good guy in the post, like Purdue does with Isaac Haas. A different guy, but you'll let him take his twos and then you stop the threes. Well, for Villanova, you want to stop the threes and make them take twos. They're not really going to look for it. You're going to have to force them to try and beat you at the rim instead of beat you from the 3-point line. It's a lot easier said than done.
And before we let you run, Jerry Palm, just get into these two coaches. Beeline looking for his first national championship. That's the only thing missing from his resume. And if Jay Wright could get 2 in 3 years, that just continues to elevate his status. When you look at the coaches actively right now in the NCAA, Wright and Beeline, in terms of what this championship can mean for both of them if they're able to win it on Monday.
Well, it means a lot more for their reputation than their actual ability. These are two great coaches. There's going to be two great coaches regardless of the outcome of this game. But, for Jay Wright, the national championship, lifts the perception of you in the eyes of the general public. Beeline is still looking for that. But anybody who knows college basketball knows that John Beeline is one of the top coaches in college basketball. And if he doesn't win tomorrow, that's not going to be any different.
This has been a fun field down in San Antonio. How's it been for the Final Four?
Oh, it's terrific. This is, one of the best host cities because you've got a great downtown with a lot to do. Everything's walking distance. You could have San Antonio, New Orleans, Indianapolis, rotate those three, and you don't really ever have to go anywhere else.
Well, I'm extra jealous. Enjoy yourself. We appreciate it, Jerry. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.